the way it's existing.
You don't have to start over, don't worry.
And so that's one of our big issues. So in order to make our area a little bit bigger footage wise, we need to kind of encroach towards the street. So, and in order to do that, it shouldn't affect any issues with like looking at for traffic safety issues, things like that. If you look at the photo number I think 5 and 6 as well, if you look up the street in that direction, if we were to expand it, it's not gonna block any views. If you look at the very last photo, number 9, right there, you can kind of see the line there where the visibility would be if we were to extend out the garage that far. It's only 8 feet from our existing location. And that's the visibility impact that you're really looking at the intersection is that yellow line there. And as you can see where we have our car currently sitting in photo 7, that's usually where it's parked on a regular basis. So I think that blocks a lot more view for traffic and safety reasons than having, in addition to have our car inside a garage, and you'd have more open and visibility than what's there currently. Let's see. And then go ahead.
That's about it.
Yeah, I think from a pedestrian standpoint, I think it'll actually be safer in our neighborhood. And so far, all of our neighbors have signed off and agreed that they have no objection to that. And I think we submitted those
Somewhere.
in there. And all be all the it's only gonna be 8 feet, but yet the request itself is for 15.9 feet. Because the extension is already there at
The
that.
road was redone, and we had the road redone like 15 years ago, so the road was moved.
And then the biggest thing, and actually the view as you see it right there in photo 9 where the garbage can is. That's the front edge.
That's.
And actually, as the street Ela Terrace goes, heads west or looking up, it actually narrows, which is why our backyard is smaller. And then our house itself doesn't actually line up with the street, you know, where the driveway is, at a slight angle, which is why it is at 15.9 and not just the 8 foot, because that back, we lose another 2 more feet from there because the road itself creeps towards our lot area, or the way it's, you know, drawn out, or you could say the other way, our house is lined up that way. But in order to make it perpendicular, it's lined up perfectly straight with Goucher laying in front, and that's probably why the angle of the house and the garage sits that way. So in order to make it sound, that's where the 15.9 actually comes with, where it approaches more to the west into the backyard. It's just tighter there because we only have the, like I said, the 468. So. So yeah, that was everything else.
Anybody else here to speak during the public hearing section? And don't worry, during the questions people have, or clearly we can ask those and you guys can answer those. This time was really intended to be an opportunity for anybody to be able to speak on it.
Okay.
Anybody here? Well, anybody online to speak during the public hearing section? All right, there we go. We will close that and move on to item 6, which is a consideration of action by Ellen and Lynn 8 at 5507 Garfield Lane. And this is requesting a variance from the Code of Ordinance section 480-24E for a street yard setbacks for the purpose of building a new attached garage and a second floor addition to the main structure, case Z 001-2024. Done.
Thank you. So really, this is a way of overview. The variance being requested here is for the street yard. given that this is a corner lot, both sections of the lot that face the street are going to be subject to the 30-foot 30 setbacks. With that, the two back corners effectively of the backyard beyond the street yard, as you're heading on this plan, if you're heading back to the northwest, those setbacks will actually be 7 feet. So there's effectively, you get 2 street yards on a corner lot and no backyard. You kind of get that break there. So I just wanted to point that out because the plot plan and the survey do actually show a 40-foot setback there in the western side with a shed, but that would actually be 7 feet. So just kind of clarifying that from a zoning perspective. So the reason this is before the zoning board is the proposed addition, sort of on that facing Ella in the proximity within that street yard, 30-foot setback. So it's both the additional stall, but also the vertical expansion, the second floor, also falls within that setback. That's
Diane, so we don't forget about you.
Thank you.
Yeah, do you mind going first if you have any initial either questions or thoughts?
Well, one was gonna be, are we considering the second story or just the garage? But I guess it's all one. And Doug, you just clarified that. So just so I understand, from the applicants, so your garage is gonna be 8 foot, it's gonna be 8 feet out further toward the driveway, basically.
Correct.
Okay. And Doug, they can't do anything but. Well, I guess they're out of compliance as it is. So the only thing they'd be able to do without a variance is to build up on the existing footprint. Is that correct?
the existing footprint, if let's say that southwest corner that's 23 feet today, they would have to push that back 7 feet to go vertical. For argument's sake, it's 1 story. If you're going to go 2 stories, and to comply with zoning, it would need to be 7 feet further back as well. They would have room to the west as currently situated, but again, it would need to be set back. They'd still run into street yard if it was maintaining that existing line sort of along Bella Terrace.
Okay, that's all I have right now. Thanks.
If something comes up, just shout out, Diane. So
I will, Brian.
I'm not always looking up there, so.
I'm not shy.
All right. Go ahead, folks here.
More of a question for Doug. I think the applicants have mentioned that it was the narrowness of the lot. Is the lot particularly narrow compared to like the standard or an average lot?
I would say one of the more unique elements here is actually more of the as they mentioned, the sort of angle of Ella Terrace as it relates to the property, that it's not running sort of parallel with that. Let's say this was not a corner lot, the frontage of 80 feet along Goucher is pretty reasonable, I would say, but I think just with the corner lot and maybe the location on the lot as well, that poses some challenges. Of course, whenever the lot lines are not sort of consistent, that creates challenges. But from a typical lot's frontage, we would see 70 or 80 feet as pretty typical.
Not our first corner lot we've dealt with and the challenges. And they kind of dovetails into my question with, I think you said was Ella Terrace was redone a number of years ago and you lost some space, or can someone tell me more about that? Like what happened? Did you lose? Was the offset changed? Did it infringe upon that even more? Did it?
Don't know
Don't know.
necessarily.
Okay.
It looked like it might have been similar when it was built, construction wise. But I don't know if they put the curb and gutter in, if that changed things, because I think originally the neighborhood didn't
We
have
didn't have
curb and gutter. But that was put in before we moved in, so
Okay.
that would have been around before 2000.
And likely the right of way didn't change.
Probably.
So the lot lines would have stayed the same,
Right.
although the road may deviate.
DDA, okay.
One would think. You would probably have some documentation that came along with your house.
Presumably.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mike.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of stole some of my thunder about the first corner lots are always unique, right? Challenging. Everyone is different in that sense. Right, city makes their updates, right? Road improvements. Same thing, right? As we all understand, right? Sometimes they put sidewalks in sometimes. Those part of those front yards, right?
Yep.
In our community. I would say that from looking at just the lot, a couple questions is that. I see there is definitely room to push that addition to the north. And I'm just wondering why there was that consideration wasn't. I kind of want to hear your explanation why that wasn't discussed in the design versus coming forward 8 feet. It looks like you have plenty of room to the north for that addition versus
Our third bedroom only has that window. And we
Understand.
can't move that window.
So the thought was, in order to have a garage that's at least a little bit more roomy. And that it can accommodate a car and you can have some room, you know, in front and behind it. In order to do that, going laterally doesn't allow us to be able to do that. We have to kind of encroach, you know, in this direction, north-south. In order to go, if we go north and that encroaches on the window, we have to kind of come out to the street side so we can avoid that sort of thing and have that nice open view of the window there where it is right now. In order to have that angle, to have more of a square type garage, a little bit deeper than instead where it is right now. If we had that way, it would be an extra room, but it wouldn't be as roomy in the front and the back as we were kind of looking for space in case we wanted to put a larger item in there, not just a vehicle, but maybe a boat or something like that. We couldn't do that in that direction, and that way it wouldn't be as accommodating. So we would still have to do that. Either we go that way to add it, would have to encroach those directions. So
right.
yeah, so that's what we were looking at for that way, going that way instead. Plus it kind of encroaches on the neighbor's area a little bit more to the north and to the west. Instead of kind of creeping out this way. So we figured that would probably be the best option for us, especially having a deeper garage. That's why we were looking at for that instead of having, you know, longer rectangular. And then it was easier for us to build a room upstairs too, to have more of a square room than a rectangular room. So that's why we looked at it that way. It would be easier.
Okay, thank you. I guess, you know, part of our responsibilities as the zoning committee here is it's not our how can I put that design, right? We never look from our seats as a design, but I think that falls on the shoulders of the homeowner, right? And their contractor to come up with solutions. And for that, be it interior solutions or exterior space solutions versus coming to the city and asking for an encroachment. And depending on how much that encroachment is, right? I think I'm struggling with the safety issue with the house being so close to the street, if it's allowed. It's only a 14-foot driveway when it's completed. And I'm wondering from the safety aspect from the city, if there's any safety concerns in that sense for emergency vehicles being 14 feet from the curb, right? The question then is, if the cars are not parked in the structure, they will not fit in the driveway being 14 feet deep. So that ultimately becomes a safety concern, and then they would have to be in the street.
That's incorrect because
Well, not according to your plans. Your plans are submitted to the city and it says 14 feet, 1 inch.
Because we have, our house is already 6 feet over.
It
So
it
we
is,
only need
it
the
is
8
one
feet.
corner.
No, I understand.
Yeah,
I
so it's
understand.
one spot where it meets that
understand.
at the angle.
Yep.
So-
No, I get that, but
Our driveway footprint is the same exact footprint that we're parking in right now. So where that car is right now is exactly where another car would be if we have another garage, if the garage comes out
Yeah.
8 feet.
okay. And again, keep in mind that we only can see what we see from the plans that you've submitted, right?
Mhm.
And then that's the question we have to make our decisions on. And that's why we're kind of bringing those questions up to you guys tonight, or at least from my
Yeah.
seat. Just making sure that, there is enough room there, for a vehicle to be in the driveway. If it's not in the garage itself.
So the,
And I'm just gonna jump in just so I make sure I understand what you're saying in your question.
Yep,
Cause the plans, and I understand what you're saying, went from the plans with the 14.1 in the, whether or not, part of it, you're saying that. Basically in picture number
I think it's nice.
9,
Yeah.
picture number 9, where your
Yeah.
car is parked,
That is correct.
is. In front of the basket, this basketball hoop in picture number, did photo number 2,
Correct, where the driveway
And-
ends right there.
and this is where your driveway would start. According to your plans.
Yeah.
Correct.
For the 14.1
That
um,
driveway stays.
offset,
Correct, the driveway stays.
I just want to be clear on.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're, yeah, exactly where you're looking at right there. Maybe a better picture, yeah, is that one. that you were
Is
looking at.
photo 2.
Photo
Yeah.
2, I was looking at photo
Yeah.
2 and photo 9.
Yep, those are the questions I have.
So it's our existing driveway, yeah, basically the way
Correct.
it is, there's nothing really is encroaching on where our vehicles currently parking, yeah. Yeah. I think the footprint actually shows our plot plan right here.
Yeah.
This shows the concrete area.
Mhm.
Yeah, so right here, this little jog is what we're talking about, so that would be where the. So kind of look at it, yeah, it's there, yeah. And
Yeah,
then,
they're not overlaid.
right,
We have no.
Yeah, it's hard to
We have
see.
no definition of how the new overlays with the existing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this one's probably the best.
yeah, I think
To get
actually
that.
you're right, that one
That's
is
what
Right.
the first
And I have to have it right here in front of me.
Yeah, you get
Right.
an idea of
number.
that little line.
But it's hard to tell just from the
Um,
plans.
Yep.
as I mentioned, right, it's not the board's responsibility to come up with a design solution for interior spaces or bedrooms. In that sense, and it is not hardship as it comes to front of the board. When it comes to design choices, right? It's just setback, safety, right, to public and yourself and your family. Is always a concern. That's kind of the main question I had of just the reasoning, not willing to push that towards the north. Instead of coming forward.
The other piece I have a question I think is semi-connected, so it might be best to piggyback right now. And earlier you mentioned something about the stairwell that's already going to the basement and trying to match up those stairwells. Does that? Is the alignment of those stairwells also add to the positioning of the garage space? Because I know the second story connectivity. I don't know if you can speak to that at all.
Yeah, it does a little bit because if we were to move it, like obviously towards the window too. The stairwell then will come like right up into the middle of our, new addition. Where in this design here, it'll kind of be on one side, and so then we have room enough for a second story bathroom right there instead of it being broken up. We have a hallway there, so if you look at the it's
H6?
yeah,
Yep.
so if you look at it there, it comes right up to that side. If we were to obviously move the other direction, it lines up perfectly. So if we were to shift it back a little bit, now we're kind of avoiding that. But if you can see the upstairs here doesn't encroach too much on it. We're not taking too much space away, but it does line up nicely when we can go into our into the bedroom and not have to worry about extra space. And we will have a little bit of a void space there anyway upstairs, but we'll have like a little nook with a window and something upstairs for us to be able to use this in that hallway and not just dead space. We got a closet there for mechanical, where we kind of utilize that for the addition, and then we don't have to do any additional mechanical stuff to the main house. We can put everything there into there, the separate heating and cooling would be there. So it won't have to redesign and connect to it. It'll be its own separate entity there. So that's how we were able to utilize that space.
Thanks all I had for questions. Thank you.
Answered. Yeah, I think you answered most of them.
As it relates to parking depth, I know in plan commission, there's often discussion about parking stalls, and I think that we have laid out. Is there also information that we have as it relates to driveway standards? Kind of pointing to Wynn's question of like, when push comes to shove, what is that distance, and is there an existence?
I don't believe there is a specific standard within zoning that would be laid out. So with this, is there I didn't get to drive by the site. Is there a sidewalk or sort of a terrace coming? No, this goes straight onto the street, so it is 14 feet. Okay, because typically you may see an additional, terrace or extra 5 feet or something like that, depending on what's shown. I would say, I mean, typical stall, you'd be looking at 18 feet in depth for plan commission for a new commercial space or something like that. It would be a 9 by 18 that you would be looking at least for a traditional stall, not a driveway. But typically, from a permit perspective, I don't believe we have design guidelines. I can take a quick look, but for the most part, with new driveways, it's really appropriately located on the lot. We're looking at things like that. But what I will say is, this is from a purely design standpoint, the proposed driveway is away from the corner, but it's not sort of a new. There's no apron cut or something. No new apron cut or anything
No.
like that. It's all.
Right.
It's the current driveway,
Yeah.
our existing driveway.
And Doug, do we know how much distance is in front of the property line on Ella Terrace before Thurman Gutter? Because that 14.1 is just to property line, not to curb and gutter.
Right.
Correct.
We've got an additional 10 feet. That goes
There's an
there.
additional 10 feet of
Actually,
right away.
yeah, actually 12, I think it's 12 or 15.
Which I think,
Typically it's 12 or 13.
well, it changes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But here it's 12, so,
I think that's important for people to
right, and that would, yeah.
to know, because I think that is exactly.
You
the
can
point.
see it more in picture, not photo number 1.
Yeah, that if our standard is, hear me out and help me make sense of this, right? Like, if we're saying a parking stall needs to be 18 feet.
Right, we
We're
don't
approving-
have that right now.
I know, well, actually you do, and I'll get to that in a second. If we're saying a parking stall should be 18 feet, and we're gonna approve something that's 14 feet, well, clearly it's more than 14 feet right now,
Right,
because your car's not sticking out into the road. It's
Right,
because you
correct.
have the right of way in addition to that.
okay,
So if the right of way here lets us make it up for right now, is 10 feet, let's say,
Right,
you really have approximately 24 feet in that area that you're utilizing as driveway parking space,
okay.
because that whole first slab might be actually right away.
I think
Correct,
that's,
that would
yeah.
make more sense,
If,
yeah.
so Brian, I
Right.
think that's my concern, is that. Let's say, for instance, you buy a truck, right? In the future, and that truck takes up 22 feet. We know a truck today takes up 20 feet at a minimum. Right, to get in, closed doors, that's what it is, so. What I wanna know is, do we have that 20 feet clearance for safety while a vehicle is in the driveway, if somebody else or somebody decides to park in that space, right? And not on the street. So that's my question.
Yeah,
And concern.
Yeah.
So,
and so with the 14 feet, there's an additional 12 feet.
so I'd like to know that for a fact, if what that is, before I make my decision.
We'll get a rough estimate here, this won't be exact, but it'll be. That's much faster at this thing, because I've
And I-
tried this on my own.
We put that on our original stuff that I submitted, but then we had to have our plot plan and this designs.
Another 13.5 feet.
I'll tell you where I'm struggling. Is that specifically a desire for a larger garage, growing family, these types of concerns, which we often hear. Is specifically not grounds for a variance. And we hear that often, I can think off the top of my head, a handful of these that we've denied. I think one before, anyone here, I think else was on this board that we denied for an attached versus a detached garage. Because someone just wanted to store a boat or a lawnmower or something. Just because you might wanna like put a boat in there, or you need to you need a bigger garage because. Vehicles are larger than what probably was. Were definitely around when this garage was built, and that's not typical for the city. But it's specifically not grounds, it's not a unique physical property limitation, it's not grounds. And it doesn't meet the requirements for a variance, and I usually I need something more than just that. If I'm gonna consider a variance, and it sounds like the lot itself isn't terribly unique, it looks like it's, Ella Terrace maybe encroaches and is not completely, square to the lot. But the only thing I have is a corner lot, but we have a lot of corner lots.
Right, but we can't put a garage, we can't put a 2-car garage on Ewa. On Goucher, I mean.
I think
Yeah,
We don't
A
have
lot of
enough
people
room.
don't have 2-car garages. A lot of people don't have garages in Monona.
Well, we would like to have a bedroom above
I
that
know.
garage.
I know.
Expand our house.
I know. But like the rules say, a growing family, a desire for a larger garage. Specifically is not grounds to grant a variance, and I'm bound by the rules, and I have to follow those rules. There's case law, and we're bound by that. And that's just where I struggle. And I wanna let you know where I struggle, so you can respond to that.
Our response is to build a garage to accommodate our current vehicles. And in order to do so, we would have to even if we were to go to the north,
To the west.
more to the west, sorry, to the west, to the west. Instead of to the north, we couldn't accommodate our vehicles that way with a little bit of space, room around there, even if you were to get a truck. We couldn't do that and park it without going that direction to the north in order to build that. So we have to kind of go to the south, or otherwise we're encroaching on the window. We're not gonna have our 8% glass space for a room. That room's now kind of almost useless in a sense. And that was my proposed office area, since I'm now working from home. part of the time. That was my proposed office space, is to utilize that while still having a 3-bedroom house.
Understand, right,
So that's
understanding,
what I'm looking at for that.
understanding that,
So, yeah,
as I mentioned before,
so,
there are design ideas. And if you dig deep enough into the design criteria and the code requirements for a bedroom. Or that. There are ways to get that room and still be viable with that. That's not our position here today to talk about that, but there is room on your property. To construct a garage to get what you want without asking for that variance. If you stay within the parameters of your home itself. In the same boundary lines of your existing home today. You could possibly do that.
that would be a lot more expensive financially to be able to do that.
Okay.
And,
As
yeah, so
the board had mentioned, right,
that would be very expensive.
that is. On the table again. Not under our guidelines of. A difficult or. Grounds for. A variance. We hear we hear the things that you're trying to achieve within the parameters, we understand that. And again. We have granted. Variances in the past. Knowing the existing home is actually encroaching in our existing zoning. Right, setback requirements. But staying within the boundary lines or parameters of the existing dwelling, is that correct, Doug?
In as much as in this location, you're suggesting adding to the west, but not to the south.
Correct.
Yes, I think we have seen a couple applications come to mind where they, in that instance, have added to the side of the house, but not the front. Yeah, sort of
Trying to
maintaining the
come up with, right,
established line.
so we are here trying to find solutions.
Yep.
In that sense.
I mean, there are key pieces and I know it's difficult on both sides of this table. And there is a piece of it's unnecessary hardship, like even that's a tough bar and we can set that aside for a second. And even when we look at unique physical limitations, like one of the pieces that's listed there, even though it probably shouldn't be listed up above, is the whole idea of like a larger garage is not a reason that we can use as a finding of fact to say why we are varying from the code of ordinances. I think there are elements of saying, if there were no other options available on the site, you might have other ability to kind of demonstrate, or we might have a different ability to demonstrate that there is some unique physical property limitations that contribute to the hardship. But I think it's difficult. It's not an easy property, I get it. And I think things could be done, might not be the easiest solution. Unfortunately, we don't get to design here. We only get to kind of interpret the rules that exist and follow them out, even when we don't necessarily agree with them. Which is kind of just important to remember, like sometimes we don't even agree with the rules that we have to uphold. It just kind of works that way. Diane, any other?
Yeah, I would just piggyback on what you said, Brian, and that just to clarify, these are state statutes. They're Wisconsin state statutes. They're not Monona. Guidelines or the rules that we have to follow, the 3 things you have to hit. They're written in state statute currently. And yeah, I mean, it's tough when you have to prove hardship. In other words, you wouldn't be able to use the home for its intended purpose without the variance. And the intended purpose of a home is to live, reside, and yeah, this was, I looked at this and It's tough, and I do believe that you have a unique property limitation. I think when you have two side yards, a deep front yard and a shallow backyard, that is a unique property limitation. And then we do get some of those, and but yeah, I'm struggling on the hardship as well, unfortunately.
Any other questions or comments? that people- Or recommendations or motions?
I would move to deny. I don't think that at minimum we have a hardship. I also don't think there's enough unique physical property limitations, and I think Diane's probably disagree with me on that second point, but I would move to deny it based on those two grounds.
Is there a second so that we can have a conversation?
I'll second.
Okay. Doug. A question, if I were the applicant, I would want to know. If a request is denied, but there is an alternative request, so for example, it was briefly discussed here. Hey, your current footprint already is a variance, even if it's not an approved variance on the books. If they ended up wanting to use that footprint and do something similar, would they need to come back to this body to get that approved, or could that be a part of a motion at this stage or not?
I would say that it would still need a variance, and I would work with the applicants on that in terms of the fees and, you know, sort of scheduling of that request. But it would still need to come to this body, and I would suggest it would be best to have that planned out, drawn out, you know, to verify no side yard setbacks, for example, or something like that. And I think it would just be best to almost view it as a new application rather than approving making a motion or, you know, putting a condition that if it complies with X, that it could be approved. I think it would be prudent to bring it back and review that as a whole.
Okay. And I think what I've heard kind of people discuss, and maybe it'd be helpful for people to kind of just state in general. If applicants came back and they were using the same footprint which they have, or extending on that same line footprint to the west, those might be considerations that fit the parameters closer. I think is what that's my summary of what I've heard. I don't know if that's a fair summary, but I think there is a sense that if they're using that same footprint and going up and going back or sideways, that's different than coming additional forward. And any other questions or comments for you?
No, I hope we see you again with a different set of plans. Don't want to say no in perpetuity here, so.
Right. That has happened more than once.
Yeah.
That folks have come back and brought different plan, evidence, just, right, and we've approved those.
Yeah.
So I appreciate Diane, you mentioning that, right?
Mhm.
Done.
While we have the motion on the floor, if I could just ask the maker of the motion just to flesh out the two reasons for the hardship and the property limitation, just for the record.
Yes, I don't find that there's sufficient hardship, the justification for wanting a bigger garage. I don't find sufficient enough. I don't think it's a valid justification under our guidelines. And I don't think there's enough uniqueness in the lot to meet that requirement as well. I think it's a fairly standard lot and a fairly standard corner lot, of which there are many in many corner lots in Monona. There's nothing unique specifically about this corner lot.
Before this vote, any questions that the applicants have?
Yes, so what would be a hardship consideration for yard space? You know, typical things like that that you would have in order to have room for your own activities per se. Kids to play, you to hang out where there's not, you know, safety issues. And that's kind of what we're looking at here. You know, with ours, it's not necessarily obviously size of a garage, that's not the hardship portion of it, it's kind of the design and limitations of our existing structure and relationship to the street in order to build a garage to accommodate modern and future uses. That's kind of what we're looking at here. Most of the probably homes in Monona are similar to this, probably going through the same thing. My viewpoint on it with expanding families, we wanted to make our home useful for us, but not just for us, but maybe for when we decide to sell in the future to another Monona resident. When we decide to move on, or if we pass away. So the idea is to have something that would be more accommodating to somebody in the future, and that's what we were looking at too in that, so it's not necessarily hardship, but area for the yard and the backyard, to have like a backyard for in order for having family to play. Yeah, if we can stay away from building to the west, that's typically good for a backyard and a fenced area to have animals, things like that. It's gonna be very limiting in this yard, and I think that's why it is with other corner lots. So, yeah, so that's why, I guess that's 2 cents on a certain thing, but yeah. So if there was any, if I continue to work with Doug, if we decide to change something, obviously if we decide to narrow it, is it just because the 8 foot is too much? Or
It's
is
if you're
there?
reaching the threshold, I think what you're over so far on the emotion is maybe
So,
working with Doug on better understanding of the hardship and the unique physical property limitation.
that's what I was looking at, yeah.
Yep, and I think
So-
you're kind of spot on of like how to work with Doug on those pieces. To come back, like we want people to kind of keep modernizing houses, I think that's a good thing. And Doug can help you kind of. He can't do the work for you, but he can at least point you in the right direction and help answer questions. Brad, you had.
No, I think to like one of your last points, you hit on like the short and long-term cumulative effects, which I think is like a good argument to make. And you know, thinking long-term use of the house, even, you know, if you sell, if you do something else, if you move within Monona, hopefully within Monona, but outside of Monona, or, you know, we don't want you to pass, but if you pass. Right.
More usable.
Right,
for
usable,
somebody.
yeah, I mean, that goes to like
Yeah.
the public, you know, the public interest as well, and I think that, I mean, it does go to the public interest, and I think those factors and those kind of points do tick those boxes for me, I'm sympathetic to those points. Oftentimes, like, we don't think people have bad ideas, we're just oftentimes limited to what we can say yes to because of the ordinances and the state statutes that direct us as to the elements that we have to find in order to grant a variance. And that's usually where it fails, not that we think that people are just doing something crazy. To help you kind of understand where I'm coming from, I don't want to speak for the rest of the board.
All right, we have a motion and a second and hopefully some direction, although I know
Yeah.
not the most happy news, but all those in favor say aye. In favor of the
Aye.
motion. Yeah.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Right. Unfortunately, it was denied, but work with that, we would hope to see you back. Sometime soon.
Good to you guys.
Thank you. The next item is item number 7, which is public hearing. Come on up. Boy, man, you guys are giving me some good names. Is it Leo and Lauren? Lyle and Lauren?
The Lord is easy.
Yeah. All right. And you guys are at 5705 Cascade Common Circle, and you're requesting a variance from the Monona Municipal Code of Ordinance 480-24D-7C4, which is accessory building shore yard setbacks for the purposes of building a new storage shed in the shore yard of the property. This is case Z002-2024. Public hearing section, so generally, what is it that you're trying to do? Then we'll close that and then get into the real.
I'm gonna jump in real quick. I have to recuse myself from this one, and I'm just gonna be sitting here and I'm along for the. Okay.
So the quorum though, right?
Yes.
Yep, right.
So Lauren and I, we purchased the house at 5705 Cascade Common Circle in October of last year, sorry. And with the intention of making some repairs, updates, and living in it as a single family home for personal occupancy. One of the challenges that we have is the garage space that came with the house is insufficient for our needs, which, I mean, obviously that's not a hardship, but we have the desire to be able to store garden equipment, tools, things like winter tires for our vehicles. So that's why we would like to build a storage shed. Now, the property is, the lot itself is fairly unique. Meaning that it's on a, I don't know what is the right way to describe it. It's unique.
Yeah.
And the previous owner, the way who actually built the house, chose to build it literally as far back on the buildable area of the lot as possible. So there is nothing that can be built any further back than what the house is. There is a rule that we can't build, nor do we want to build a shed in the front yard, because that would not look very appealing. And my understanding of the zoning ordinance is that in the shore yard, the only thing that can be built is a boathouse. Now, in this case, a storage shed or a boathouse can look literally identical from the outside. The only difference is there a lawnmower inside or is there a boat inside? If it's a boat inside, then it's allowed. If there's a lawnmower, then it's not allowed. We have worked with Doug before to try to find an administrative solution. And Doug was willing to approve our request had we been willing to move it a few feet closer to the house. But if you see in the aerial drone shot, there is a very large bush that's probably decades old, probably close to 50 years old, that I just think to lose. So that's why we actually went through all this effort to go before the zoning board and get a zoning variance, so that we can have it a few feet back, so that we could save some of that landscaping, which would just be kind of irreplaceable. Anything you would like to add, Lauren?
All right. And the
One item.
okay.
Are you Matt?
I am Doug, yes. Nice to
I,
meet you.
nice to meet you. So I did share the email as requested with the board. You're welcome if you would like to summarize, if you'd like to appear at this point, just.
Sure, and happy to do so. And Matt Adler, and I'm here on behalf of my parents. Spoke with Thor, not Doug, and he urged me to, take a couple pictures of their line sites. And first and foremost, I'm here not in opposition, and my parents certainly aren't in opposition of Lauren and Lahel's request here. We're actually here in support, but we just kind of want to have a discussion that if it is approved and meets the merit of a variance, that some considerations are kind of taken in to account, and that is really the sight lines that my parents have in this sunroom. So the pictures that I did share with Thor and Doug are from their sunroom that basically has a south-facing line of windows, which are pictures 1 and 2, and a west-facing line of windows, which is basically where they spend most of the time. It's their best room of their house. It's, for lack of a better word, it's their money view of the water, of Weechawak Bay, and so you can kind of see where Lahell and Lauren want to position that shed, which to Lauren and Lahell's credit, they discussed with my dad, because I think their initial desire was to put it down closer to the water. So you can see in picture 3, where you can see the bay there, I believe, Lahell, I don't want to speak for you, but I believe that was kind of your
That's
first.
correct, yeah.
So kudos to them, the neighborly thing, being a new neighbor, they did discuss with my father. But a neighborly handshake and agreement is one thing, and then binding, you know, kind of like, how is this gonna be built? What is gonna be the height requirement or the height limitation, I should say? I believe from what was submitted, it's looking at like a 7-foot height, but then when I was talking to Thor yesterday, if approved, I believe a backyard shed approval or variance approval, the limit is 14. So I wanted to have a public discussion here on record, and maybe if it is approved in this, because I agree, I mean, if we're looking at this lot and the picture that they submitted, outside of moving it to their furthest south side of their yard, which selfishly would be probably the preference of my parents to minimize their view of the shed, this is the best spot. So to their credit, they have worked with Doug and to find a spot for that. It will still be, you can see here in pictures 1 and 2, they're gonna be looking right at it. So the hope is that the height is limited. The other hope is it gonna be a white shed that they're looking at? Will it aesthetically, will it blend in with the house? Will it be painted brown? Is there discussion that can it be moved over to this side of the property to minimize the impact of the lake view? Again, this location on this side of the lot, adjacent to my parents' home, that spot is the best spot. Without a doubt. It's much better than moving it down. If you go to picture 3, you can see the impact that a shed would have if you move it down closer to the water. So again, not here in opposition. Really, and this is coming from my parents, they want to be good neighbors. There's a few generation gap between Lahell and Lauren and my parents. But fact of the matter is, this might be my house someday, and we might be neighbors. And I don't know what kind of shit I want to be looking at, but not a 14-foot. And again, that's not their intent, that's not their plan, but a neighborly handshake versus something in writing, limiting the height, and just speaking to, you know, there's a nice little bump out of their driveway, you know, and if they can kind of keep it within that little bump out, which I believe is more than 6 feet. Again, if it has to be on that side of the property, that is the spot that would be the most ideal. So I'll leave it at that. But again, with my email, sometimes intent can get misconstrued, and I didn't want my email to come off as they're opposing it, because that's not the case. They just, you know, wanna, if it's gonna be constructed, once you get an approval, you know,
It's done.
Sure.
it's done,
Yeah.
right?
And-
Are we allowed to respond?
Yeah.
So the height concern, I just want to be able to stand up inside it, so I have no intention.
You're kind of tall though. so-
Yeah, I'm not 14 feet tall.
Yeah.
So yeah, no intention to build anything higher than what I don't hit my head in.
And
Go ahead.
in terms of like the aesthetics of it, we too want it to look nice. So we want to build something of high quality capacity, ideally an Amish shed to
Yeah.
match the,
And
keep
the,
it the same.
yeah, and the reason for the white color is because we do actually want to change the outside of
Of your
the
house.
house. So that's the long-term plan, is to lighten up everything.
All right, any other public comment? Jesus, time.
Nothing that I have.
All right. Let's close that item, go on to 8, which is consideration of action. And this is 5705 Captain County Circle, requesting a variance from the Code of Ordinance 480-24D7C4, which is the accessory building shore yard setbacks. Building a new storage shed in the shore yard. Say that. Case Z 2 of 2024.
Thanks, didn't want to jump in.
Yeah, no worries.
So as mentioned, there's a couple things here at play. So this falls within the accessory structures standards. Beyond the house towards any body of water is going to be deemed the shore yard. And so as was correctly mentioned by the applicant, the only accessory structures that are allowed in the shore yard would be a boathouse, boat shelter, pier, and basically anything associated with watercraft. It's specifically spelled out in the ordinance. So storage sheds must not be located either in the street yard or in the shore yard of the property. So in this instance, it's really the width of the house would be the only permissible location. It does also need to be a minimum of 6 feet away from the primary structure, as well as 3 feet from the side yard lot lines as well. And so the height allowance does allow for 14 feet. I believe as proposed, it would be a 7-foot wall with kind of the pitch on the roof is the current plan. What I would mention as well from the materials within the packet is that the sort of the design of the shed is, I think, sort of a type, but it's not the final design. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, we're gonna get something custom built, but it's chicken egg scenario, so.
Yeah.
That is the best representation of what we would like to get.
Yes. Thanks. So the dimensions would be set this evening, the 12 by 16, if that is the board's preference. The location,
12 by 6, correct? 12 by 16.
By 16.
12 by 16, okay.
the footprint being 12 by 16, and then the 7-foot wall height with the pitch on the roof as well. So that would be greater than 7, but that can all be discussed this evening by the zoning board. So hopefully that addresses sort of the intro here, but happy to answer any questions.
The 11 to the midpoint.
It is.
All right. Something that's quicker at the math.
Yeah.
All right.
And a 4-12 pitch.
Yes.
So,
What's over here?
so pretty close. Yeah, so we're far from the 14-foot maximum height.
So Doug, I know we've talked about this quite a bit. Of shore yards, so like, this is not our first shore yard. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, there is precedent set. There was a house in Winnequa which had a similar request come before the board. It was debated and that request was approved.
And so when we get to shore yard discussions, it gets pretty interesting. So the first discussion point, boathouse. We've had quite the discussion here around boathouses before. So there is no good definition of what a boathouse is. We've learned. But one of the things that I think has been talked about quite a bit is a boathouse is often closest to the water's edge, hopefully to maintain some watercraft-like items. Maybe, maybe not. But then it defines how big it can be and all that. And in essence, if this were a boathouse and moved to the shore, it could be 300 square feet,
Up to 1,000.
up to 1,000 square feet.
That is, yes, that is.
Because this is the only, everything else is attached to the house, this would be the only accessory. Okay.
Yeah.
It's 1,000 total.
Yeah. So like, I'm trying to like paint the bigger perspective here of like, all right, let's say let's move that down here. We can build 1,000 square foot item if we put it on the water's edge.
Sorry.
And completely block the view of anybody.
Oh.
And I only mention that in the sense of this is where I think there is some struggle when we get to the key pieces of hardship. Property limitations, those items, because there is a piece of it of what's allowed. And the reason that boathouse is allowed but no other structures is because that can be so big. And they don't want to put all these other structures in the middle of the yard blocking everybody's view. Doug, we've also recently talked about, and I think passed the new ordinance regarding pools in the backyard. And the only reason I bring that up is because in addition to a pool was pool equipment sheds, what did we call that?
It was really for in-ground, I can pull it up, but I believe it was very much at grade and below. The pool house
Mechanical stuff.
associated, yeah, the mechanicals as we would allow for AC units, for example, seen those in the new home builds, maybe they encroach on the setbacks, for example. As long as they're screened and located appropriately, that would be okay. I have seen most instances of pool equipment being located down the side of the house, you know, in line with the house and then pushed back. But definitely houses, any sort of additional structure was not included with that ordinance, so very much at grade as before.
And so, for example, if someone put a pool in the backyard and they want a shed to put all the pool stuff, they would, in essence, have to put it on the water's edge and call it a boathouse. And then it can be very big. Is there a height restriction for boathouses?
It's the same, the 14 feet.
Is there a difference if it's a channel? I'm just, and then this is actually interesting, Brian, that you bring this up, like with the channel properties, because they're unique, very narrow body of water. Can you do a boathouse on a channel? I don't know. I'm just curious versus Tony off the trail where you're on a lake.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, in any water shore yard.
Any body of water.
okay. That's interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
You don't see a lot of them, right?
No.
I mean, you see, they're all along Tony Watha.
Yeah.
But are pretty obtrusive, obviously, in the channel
Yeah.
type setting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think some of it, and I'm making suggestions or hypothesizing here, but I believe some of it has to do with the depth of the channel, that you see more piers. I'm thinking specifically along Belle Isle, for example, you see a lot more piers than you do boathouses.
Yeah.
That plenty of the boathouses, and they need to be clear of the floodplain as well. That's another consideration. So a lot of the Tony Watha boathouses you'll see with rails kind of bringing the boats out of the water. I'm not sure here. I think you might be putting the rails right into the middle of the channel, you know,
Right.
just given the width and things like that. So I think that owes a lot more to the design of what you would see along that section, but I don't disagree in terms of when it's a flat versus a slope, just as you would find elsewhere in the city, it has a differing. So
All right, I figured that would help get us kicked off. Diane, so we don't forget about you. We'll start up there.
Okay, so I didn't know if you all were trying to suggest that they put this shed on the,
I was
you
only-
know, and then the neighbor would really be upset.
Yeah, no, I was only pointing that out for, it's interesting
No,
to
I know,
think
I know.
that in a shore yard, all you can
Yeah.
have is a boathouse, but it can
Yeah.
be very intrusive on
It
everybody.
can be a small home, really. I mean, 1,000, you said 1,000 square feet?
Don't go there, please.
It can't be-
Don't do it.
Yeah.
You trying to poke the bear? I don't know, like,
No plumbing allowed.
Okay.
We wanna make sure people don't live in boathouses. Yes,
Okay.
yeah, but perfect point, right? Like, all right, yes, no, I was not,
Yes.
I was hopefully not encouraging that, but.
You're giving the hell of Lauren some ideas here.
I know.
We've already spent all our money.
Yes.
And I don't wanna put a boathouse that, like, I like seeing the openness of it, like. Frankly, if the neighbors next door took down some of the scraggly bushes and opened up my view, like, I wouldn't complain, but
Yep, all right,
Talk to
Diane.
the other neighbors, by the way.
yeah. anyways.
All right,
So
Diane.
Doug, did I understand you correctly that this shed or an accessory building that's not a boathouse needs to be within the boundary lines of the house, the existing structure of the house? So like where it is, I'm looking at the yellow square where it's the proposed shed location in the, it must be a Google Earth picture or something. And so that yellow square would have to be moved to the left? I mean, is it because it's,
So with this, and when I worked with the applicant on this, it's tricky. The shed may not extend beyond the front of the house or the rear of the house. And so really, in this location, you would be bound to sort of it being along the side of the house. Now, it does, of course, extend. It's not one line, the rear of the house.
Yeah.
And we sort of spoke about the line of the channel and the line of the house and where you would draw that. I think frankly, the dotted line as shown on the Moore surveying document sort of helped with that to show the limited location.
Okay, yeah,
I sort of said, my read of this is that the building line sort of would follow the shoreline, which would follow the channel and things like that. So it's on this side, on the north side of the house, it's pretty limited. And again, you'd be running into issues with proximity to the house. We do require it be 6 feet away. So was really trying to work with the applicant for sort of a reasonable compromise in a way that could be considered administratively, but I think getting to this was the reason that it's come before the zoning board. Just to, I think some of the limitations that were mentioned, the landscaping that's there, the existing driveway. I think a couple of those things were in play, but really, as defined in the ordinance, the zoning code, it would be not in front of or behind the house effectively, but in line with.
okay. When I was reviewing your application materials, I saw the support you got from other neighbors. And this is prior to the letter that we received today. And I was going to ask you, have you considered, which I know wouldn't be very convenient, but moving it to the opposite side in the backyard of behind your house, that's a second story. Just because there would be more depth, to the meander line, but maybe you thought, I mean, I realize the aesthetics aren't the same, or maybe the convenience, but I was just trying to
Sure.
see if you looked at all angles.
Yeah, so that would be my office, and I work from home, so out of selfish interest, I would prefer not to have a shed right outside of my office. I'd rather be able to view the water than a shed.
And actually, my office is below that, and then I'd be looking, the only window I would have would be into the other neighbor's driveway.
Okay, that's all I have at the moment.
Doug, I just want to clarify one piece on this drawing. If I heard the applicant correct, if there was a slight adjustment from this proposed location, there was a consideration of approving it at an administrative level. And am I saying that it's a 7 inches difference? Because if it's gotta be 6 feet from the building, are we talking about if this was 7 inches over, it wouldn't be here?
I think it's about a 3-foot difference.
No, so it's more, and one of the things we had spoken about was, is there a way to square off the house rather than to the channel?
I see.
And sort of.
Oh,
I think maybe-
like this.
Yes,
And if you were meeting within that, I see.
so,
But then you would be closer than the 6 feet, which I might be
correct,
somewhat talking about the unique physical property and unnecessary hardship in this conversation, like, because then if they moved it up that amount, they would be closer than 6 feet from the dwelling,
correct.
which we don't want to have happen from a safety standpoint.
I believe that's the intent, so yes, the storage of and aesthetic, I believe too, that abutting, 1 foot away or something like that, but certainly a safety consideration as well, to have that separation. And I think to meet the, and again, I'm just talking about the ordinance, I'm waiting for the application, but I would say that it's sort of the nature of it truly being accessory. It's secondary to the building rather than sort of an attachment or something like that, as well.
Okay.
So I think that there's multiple ways to interpret this in terms of the angle of the water, sort of following the meander line and tracking that towards the house, but also the building line, if you were to draw a straight north line from the southern corner. And so I believe that's the 3 feet that the applicant mentioned. So either way, you know, I think it was prudent in this location to bring it forward for the variance. And it is still in the shore yard, either way, but you know, the building line, I would say is still for discussion, you know, in some ways in terms of which you are taking it from. But I think that ultimately the decision was made, you know, by the applicant that this was the preference for the location, but I think reasons that have been laid out and they would seek variance.
Can I ask a question of Matt?
Yeah.
When you were taking the pictures.
Yeah.
Were you back, it looks like this one was back on the patio, like back here.
So they were all inside the sunroom.
Oh, okay.
So that one right there is their west facing windows in the corner of the sunroom. So it's inside their sunroom looking. So basically from this picture here, this is their sunroom with the skylights.
Right.
So they get a lot of nice light in there. And then, so these are all windows here facing west,
Mhm.
facing the channel. So that would be kind of looking out this corner, going that way.
So this is the evergreen?
That is the big pine tree, correct?
Pine tree?
Yep,
Okay.
exactly. And then the first 2 pictures are the south facing windows, looking basically at their house and the neighbor's house behind them. And that's these windows right here. So that picture was taken from inside the sunroom. And that as well was taken from inside the sunroom. You can see the corner of the wall there.
Yeah.
And that's facing the south windows.
So the
So that pine
The-
tree,
shed would be right here,
correct,
but you still have the,
which is not Lahel's office or Lauren's office, but it's my mom's office. The son is in her office. She has her lady friends over to play mahjong in Canasta. That's where they spend the majority of their time,
okay.
in that center.
I will say I like the idea of having it kind of between the trees. so
Absolutely.
You're not,
As mentioned, you know, if it's gotta be on this side of the property adjacent to my parents, they have chosen the most ideal location. Personally, if they could remove that bush and even move it, I know I didn't realize until tonight, thank you for educating me, there's a 6-foot for safety reasons, so there's probably not a lot of room to go there, but I like that there's a bump out of their driveway. And, you know, so from pictures 1 and 2, they will see the shed, but it will be to the left of
Right.
that tall pine.
that keeps, kind of hides it from when if you're kayaking. if you're
It's
camping
much
or-
better than being on the other side.
Yeah, I looked at, I think all the angles that everyone had brought up about any other locations on the property. I thought about, obviously, the short yard is the limitation here, with structures other than a boathouse. I actually like the thought process of actually where the shed is actually put. Also allowing 12 feet to the property line. That was intentional or not, but I really appreciate that because if there's emergency services that need to get to the backyard or equipment for any future use, be it personal, safety wise or anything like that, you have room hopefully there from where the shed is positioned to the property line to get through with vehicle or a small.
And that is driveway, right? Well, I mean,
Yeah,
that's,
yeah,
yeah, so what you're referring to there is actual driveway.
Yeah, that's
Right.
the end of the
Yep.
driveway.
Yep. And so there's a little bump out.
Right to
Yep,
here, right?
exactly. Yep.
And I guess thinking about just the use of itself of putting things in this storage, right, unit instead of the other completely in another corner. Right, makes things a bit easier. I don't hear any objections from any adjoining neighbors at this point. So positioning for safety with the 6 foot beyond the house. I think it was the best position in all cases.
Better than a boathouse.
What's that?
I got nothing.
Fine.
The garage.
Number
for the
two.
boat.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I forget, yeah, you.
Debated plumbing in both houses and whether that's a actual resident. Because it's got plumbing in.
Should probably go back and watch it, you can watch it.
The September one is the one that we had to take it in.
Yeah.
I can look it up.
Okay.
That's what I was saying.
Here's my 2 cents and it may not. I believe if it was in line with the house, however that line was drawn, I think taking the house edge and drawing that up to 3 feet and getting rid of a bush, although it's nice to have landscaping there, I get it. I think is meeting much more of what it is that we're expecting in a shore yard, and here's why. Shore yards, the reason we don't allow structures to be built in the shore yard is for the protection of view. We know that you have uniqueness because most buildings that have a shore yard, if they're gonna build a structure, it's gotta be on their side yard, which they ending up with a large garage is what they end up with, right? If we move that forward, if there is a bigger concern regarding the safety of the 6 feet, I think that's a hardship. However, I think there is a location to keep it in that spot, but just to move it forward that 3 feet, keep it in line with the building. One, you wouldn't be here, but we'll skip that for right now. But I think it allows the property to be used. And I'm only one person here, like there's lots, but.
May I bring up something else for consideration in the drone photo? The drone photo, yeah. So this is the driveway.
Yeah.
And what we want to do. I think it would look a little bit strange if the driveway went beyond the shed.
Yep.
And
So are you trying to match it up with the edge?
yes, it's.
Okay,
yes.
so right now it shows it pushed further.
Shows that it's over the driveway footprint.
The yellow.
So
Yeah.
it shows it in line.
We're
Oh. Yeah. Yeah, you're trying to make it in line with the driveway?
right about, yeah.
Oh, okay. This had me thrown off a little bit because, yeah, I was thinking, oh, well, that's almost the 3 feet. Scoot that back a little bit. Yeah, I'm not sure. Oh, now I see.
Yeah, that's the edge of the driveway.
On the bottom.
Everything seems to be at an angle.
The lot is at an angle.
Yeah, yeah. But you're really trying to line up.
So the edge of the shed will basically align with the end of the driveway.
That's what we're going after, yes. But we
That's
want
what
it
the
to look
plans
nice, we don't want, yeah.
Yeah, I'm,
And I see where Brian and I looked at that too, and it didn't look like it was overhanging the end of the driveway on that aerial.
yeah, where I would not see the hardship being that there's a bush there preventing it.
Yeah, I do have a question. So I want to make sure, since we are looking at a certified site plan. I don't see a stamp, but I'm assuming did the surveyor put this structure on?
Yes.
Survey?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so they do have this correct as the 6 foot, 7 inch mark where they have it on the plan.
I asked the surveyor to put a 12x6, just shed on.
Perfect.
To scale on
Okay.
the.
All right. Again, I just want to make sure,
I did not do that.
that's fine. I just want to make sure that the survey then is responsible, then if it's showing on the plan, right, as we're looking at the plan, again, we don't draw the lines. Making sure that those structures are correct on the plan, in line with a survey, or whomever drafts that plan. Okay, and again, I seen it from your survey that it lined up with the driveway. So, right, nothing beyond an existing hard surface is what I was looking at. No excavating or anything additionally needed to be done in that sense, so I appreciated that thought, so.
If I may, one option that the board could have is as part of any consideration, they could say. The wall of the shed is to be in line with the existing driveway, not to extend west. And if that means 6.7 goes to 6.4, or
Correct.
as long as it's still 6.
Right,
That could be.
I think that was my intention of my question, making sure we kept that 6-foot setback.
I'd be comfortable if that were included as a possible condition. So to sort of alleviate those concerns.
Doug, I know their intent's not to build a 14-foot height shed, but there'll be language in there to, I think they've already got their shed picked out. Someone did the math, was it 11 feet and,
Yeah.
to kind of limit that height as,
Yes, I would say that because, because this is coming through for a variance, that would be a reasonable, to sort of to put a number, to the peak of the roof that could be something that the board could also look at as well.
I don't know, it's going on a slab, because now if you got a slab, it's that 11 feet, now 12 feet, I'm getting at there, so.
In some ways, I think that is in public interest because then they're not putting in a structure, like if they moved it closer to the house, they don't have to abide by the 11-foot height. And this kind of guarantees that you've got that. It's not your height.
34.
For the house,
Yeah.
it's 35 to the
35. I mean, if we attach this to the house, it could be 35.
2 stories.
Not suggesting that either.
I know.
Wait, is it 1,000 square feet for just the bottom level, or is it?
And I mean, Wynn, you probably have better eyes on, is that look 412 to you?
Yeah,
Those photos?
yeah, that style house, yeah, that's pretty close to it, to be honest. Yeah, that is very close to it. I think, one of the questions is that anytime we have a detached structure, accessory building, an attachment to the house, right? Even if we're not talking about a zoning variance, is the applicant conscious of the design of the structure? And does it enhance the house, right? Or is it some one-off that somebody likes to, right, likes art? I don't, wrong, I'm not an art critic, but no, I think that's a very concern, right? Are we trying to match the roof pitch, right? The symmetry of the house versus that? Those are all conscious things to the public, right? If we're asking for a variance, right, in the situation, those are some of the things we should consider, and I appreciate that again.
And I would just clarify that from sort of a staff perspective as well, that I think I'm cautious, typically we say we're not considering height, or we're not considering, it complies with the ordinance, but I think here in the fact that it's looking to deviate from the ordinance, that this variance is being requested, verifying the location, the height, I would say would be within the purview of the board, that because the variance is requested. Now, if this was located, did not need a variance, it could be up to.
Right,
It could be 14 feet.
Correct.
But I think because of the location, and I think just sort of, I would just clarify that as my reasoning as to why the question of could the height be specified, or could it be, a max point listed? That would be the reasoning for it. That, I would typically be reluctant or skeptical of that, but I think in this case, because relief is being requested, I think it's reasonable to attach a condition to that, if the board chooses.
And what would, if you're building a shed like we see, similar to what we see in the mock-up drawing, and you say you need 7 feet, what is a pitch on that then? I don't know. When do you know, or?
But typically, we try to match the roof, or a 412 pitch roof is very common in our municipality, region, area. Many, more so, the majority of houses have a 412 pitch roof. And that's most common in sheds as well, shed structures, or a bit less.
Okay.
Let me say 412. Explain it to the dummy.
Oh, I'm sorry. So,
Alright.
so every 12 inches linear, you go 12 inches up and then you draw a line.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Going back to math.
Sorry,
Geometry. yeah.
sorry, it's all right.
Rise and run.
Yeah, there you go, or that. Thank you. But again, mimicking, right, the house pitch, right, again, looking similar to, so I think that's very common.
So you think 11 feet is pretty good?
It's close, right? I don't think we want to get down to inches here or there, but I think in this instance, knowing what the house is, if they wanted to match that, I think that'd be just fine, and we're not gonna go anything beyond that, if it's a couple inches here or there.
All right, is someone willing to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to pass. Grant the variance under the description that the unique reason for the variance is the where the house is located onto the rear shoreline. And that the location of the shed is reasonable at best, in best placement, and they've considered all aspects of for the safety and view of the neighbors as well. Does that meet all the criteria? Am I missing one?
So just going through my notes, I have the, I believe you mentioned hardship relates to the house location with regards to rear shoreline.
Yep.
That the location is reasonable and deemed to be the best placement. It satisfies safety and view.
And roof picture of the structure not to exceed the roof pitch of the house.
Do you want to specify 12 by 16?
Oh, as long as they stick to the size of what's on the application. Right?
With a height maximum of 11 feet at pitch.
I probably would not ask that, I'd just say matching or less of the house roof.
So a sidewall of 7 feet and then a pitch to match the house.
Sure, yep, I mean. The application asks for that, right?
Yep.
So we don't have to specify that in our. Or do we?
I think Doug was asking that we add in those components.
I think I would see that bundled, that a sidewall, condition approval, sidewall 7 feet.
Okay.
Roof pitch not.
Right, so sidewalk 7 feet, ready?
Perfect.
And
Anything about not extended beyond the driveway?
Yeah, the location, I think, is the other one. It's as proposed, which is not extending beyond the driveway.
And clarifying location not to, if that's your will, the location not to extend beyond
the rear
the end of the.
portion of existing driveway.
And I just want to thank Helen and Lauren for working with my dad. They, as new neighbors, they took a look at his shed, asked some questions, and decided not to build a boathouse, so thank you.
And I had one more thing, Doug, please, just as per site plan provided.
Hang on, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, now the question.
Does it have to be exactly 12 by 16 or can it be like not exceeding 12 by 16? Like what I'm asking is like, since we're getting it custom built, if it ends up being a little bit smaller than what we, is that a problem or does it have to be at this point exactly 12 by 16?
Smaller is okay.
Okay.
But I would ask that it be, if not changed to a 17 by but rather
Yeah.
less than 16, less than 12.
okay.
But not to exceed.
All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. Doug, do you need more info?
I'm still just trying to run through, so. When the hardship is the house location, I guess clarifying hardship versus property limitation, just for the sake of the motion. I have safety in view as public interest, not harming public interest. I have the house location with regards to the shoreline, location, best placement. Could you just pass out which is hardship, which is property limitation for so I can write that in the motion, please?
The hardship would be the existing location of a house in conjunction with the,
Second.
The shoreline.
thank you,
Shoreline.
shoreline, thank you. Shoreline restrictions.
Thank you, and property limitation, reasonable best placement.
Okay,
Perfect. And is the second okay with that correction? Perfect. You got everything?
Yes.
All right. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Thanks, guys.
All right, nice to meet you all. For coming, appreciate it. Yeah, it's amazing. No, I didn't know you were planning on taking over.
All right.
Property.
Next meeting day, April 18th, April 16th. Yeah, are they looking?
I'm working with somebody right now on a household patent application, so if folks can add that to the calendar, that would be appreciated.
And I'm hoping our.
hey, thanks, guys. I'm glad you found a house in Monona.
Yes.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, any updates on DEI or sustainability? Anything from you, Doug? Nothing.
Thank you for bringing your background to the table tonight. I appreciate that. I- All the time, all the time, that's, yeah, each applicant is always different, and
Hang on, let's close
We
this.
love the-
Motion for adjournment?
I'll move.
Motion to, yep, second,
All right, all those in favor say aye.
I.
aye.
Opposed? All right, good to see you, Dan.